So this is our theme this morning, act like a man, act like a man. And, I've been talking about this a lot lately with the guys at my church. And, what does it mean to act like a man? I've got some young guys that I've been talking to. Actually, for several years, I've had this with one guy after another, young guys in their 20s that come to me and they say, will you mentor me or will you meet with me? And I know that we've talked about that a little bit here at the Bible study. And when I sit down with them, I've had guys look me in the eye and say, here's what it really comes down to. I really don't know how to be a man. 23, 24, 25 years old. I don't know how to be a man. And we are currently in a generation that's coming up now that we're going to be pretty close to half of all of the young men that are the teenagers that are becoming young men today will have spent at least some time in their time growing up without a dad in the house. These days, guys, they just don't know how to be men. This is pretty well chronicled. I'm going to read some stuff out of this book from William Bennett called The Book of Man, and it's a great book, a great compilation of essays from all different kinds of authors and literature. But listen to this. He said, one might argue that in our time there is especially a need for guidance, and the important role of men for boys is particularly acute. Of course, there are successes, and every day great boys are raised to be great men. But there are too many other cases as well. Confusion regarding manhood abounds, including confusion about a proper understanding of virility. Fathers are missing from boys' lives in devastatingly high numbers. Children are exposed to a dizzying array of cultural signals about what it means to be a man, signals both good and bad. Our society is moving forward so rapidly that it has forgotten much good from the past. And women are beginning to take the place of men in many ways. Women have now surpassed men in several categories that reflect economic and cultural standing. In American colleges, for instance, for every 2 men who graduate with a Bachelor of Arts degree, 3 women receive a Bachelor of Arts degree. Women now dominate 13 of the 15 job categories expected to grow most in the coming decade. This has led some to ask, do we even need men? Well, I think so. He goes on to say, the survival of humanity once depended on a man's hands, muscles, and intelligence. If he could not provide for his family, it did not survive. But today our livelihood rests substantially on technology, microprocessors, and artificial intelligence. Men and women seem less dependent on each other for economic livelihood. This newfound freedom has provoked many men to ask the question, what does it mean to be a man today? People don't know what it means to be a man. And so we're sort of sitting around like this guy going, what is a man? What is a man? Well, maybe this is what a man is. This is Chuck Norris. This is an actual quote from an Iraqi police trainer. He said, I've seen his videos. He's a hero. He saves the city. He protects women and children, and he fights crime wherever he is. We should all be like Chuck Norris. It's pretty good. And I don't know if you've heard of these, but there are some things that you might need to know about Chuck Norris that might help us understand manhood. For instance, when Chuck Norris enters a room, he doesn't turn the lights on. He turns the dark off. Fear of spiders is arachnophobia. Fear of tight spaces is claustrophobia. Fear of Chuck Norris is called logic. Chuck Norris has a grizzly bear carpet in his bedroom. The bear isn't dead. It's just afraid to move. And my favorite one, Chuck Norris's tears cure cancer. Too bad he's never cried. So maybe that's what it means to be a man, to be sort of this. And I love Chuck Norris. He's one of those guys that somehow got this place in our culture that we sort of hold him up in this way. Walker, Texas Ranger, and all those great movies. And he's a great Christian guy. Chuck Norris is a great Christian guy. But I don't think that this is really the definition of manhood. I think this might be a good definition of manhood, though. This is the verse that was in that video. 1 Corinthians 16, 13, and 14. Be on your guard. stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong, do everything in love. Be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong, and do everything in love. And here's the interesting thing. That middle phrase, be men of courage, if you really look at other translations, this is actually what it says. Be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men. Act like men. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. And so this is what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at how to act like a man, and we're going to talk about the principles that are in these two verses. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of what it means to be a man, but I don't know about you. I can't memorize 30 things, but I can memorize 5. So we're going to talk about be on your guard, being vigilant. We're going to talk about faith, courage, and strength. These things sort of go together. Standing firm in the faith, being men of courage, and being strong. And then we're going to talk about how do you do everything in love. So this is the big idea. These verses are our big idea for the day. So be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong, do everything in love. You want to memorize this with me? You want to memorize this with me? All right, stand up. Stand up. I'm going to show you how to memorize this. Now, there are hand motions. All right? We're going to put up, because when you put your hands together with your words, that gives you the ability to remember things better, all right? So this is be on your guard. Say that, be on your guard. And then this is stand firm in the faith. What do you think this is? Be men of courage. And you kind of got to, get some vibration there, right? Be men of courage. Be strong. Do everything in love. Now look, make sure you keep fists when you do that, all right? Because we're treading on the edge of manhood here. It's not be men of love, okay? It's do everything in love, all right? So let's do that. You ready? Good job. Have a seat. So there's our big idea for today. All right? Be on your guard, stand firm in the faith, be men of courage, be strong, and do everything in love. So let's talk about being on your guard. Vigilance. Vigilance is one of the attributes, one of the character attributes that we want to develop as men. Now, the interesting thing to me is that when I think of, and when I read this verse, be on your guard or be on watch is how it's sometimes translated. And I think about vigilance, what I think about is like defense. Do you think about that, right? So it's like I'm manning the wall. I'm being defensive. I'm looking out for the attack. And in honor of something that's coming up, it reminds me kind of a defensive lineman, like Vince Wilfork from the best football team in the history of mankind, the New England Patriots. I've got a mic, you don't, all right? So Vince Wilfork, right, he's on that line and he's keeping everybody from getting past him. He's playing defense, right? But there's another thing with vigilance that's proactive, that's offensive. So we would, of course, use not only the best quarterback, but the prettiest quarterback of all time. And apologies to Joe Namath. And that would be Tom Brady. So Tom, he's looking out and he's looking for ways to attack. Right? He's being just as vigilant for how he can move forward as Vince Wilfork is to being defensive from protecting his side of the ball. And so I think this is the same for us as men, that there's a part of being vigilant that is being protective, and there's a part of vigilance that is being ready to attack. Ready to attack. So, for instance, in Proverbs 4:23, if you have a Bible, we're gonna turn around a little bit here. But Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. So, how do you do that? How do you guard your heart? Well, listen to this: put away perversity from your mouth, keep corrupt talk from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Make level paths for your feet. And take only ways that are firm, so have good judgment. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. That's a way to be reactive, to be defensive, to set your life up in such a way that you're guarding yourself from things like sin and temptation, attack, distraction. Keep your feet on level paths. Another thing that Jesus cautioned us about was being defensive against false religion. He said, beware, for instance, of the yeast of the Pharisees. What was he talking about? He's talking about legalism or anything else that comes in and sort of corrupts our faith, corrupts our religion. Look, guys, if somebody says something to you that sounds really good, but it's not in here, it's not really good. It's wrong. And especially when we do this to ourselves, right? You take verses out of context. So we have to defend ourselves. We have to be vigilant when we hear things that sound good. God helps those who help themselves. All those words are in the Bible, just not in that order. Okay? So there's all kinds of stuff like that can pull us away from a true faith. All right, but what about being proactive? What does that look like? Well, look at turn to Psalm 5. Psalm 5 verse 3 says this, "In the morning, O Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning I lay my request before you and wait in expectation." So what's the premise there? In the morning, you hear my voice. Well, what does God have to, what has to happen for God to hear your voice in the morning? You better show up, right? So there's sort of this expectation that I'm gonna be in front of God on a regular basis. I'm gonna talk to Him on a regular basis, and then I'm gonna be expectant. I'm gonna have expectation that God's gonna answer my prayers. And then Luke 12:37. Jesus says this. It will be good for those servants. He's using a parable here. He says, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when he comes. So part of being proactively vigilant is expecting that God will do things. And being ready when God presents those opportunities to us to step into it, to attack. Like Tom Brady, when he sees a hole in the defense, that's where he throws the ball, right? And so we need to live our lives that same way. Looking for holes in the plans of the evil one and attacking them. Looking for those times when God says, do this or do that. Here's this opportunity. Here's that opportunity. And a vigilant man is ready for those opportunities. So vigilance, that's the first attribute of acting like a man. All right? So the second one is vigilance. Then we're going to talk about faith, courage, and strength. Faith, courage, and strength. So it's interesting because these things, it's easy to say faith, courage, and strength, but the first one is really not faith. It's really stand firm in the faith, right? Stand firm in the faith. So if I'm going to stand firm in my faith, I better know what that faith is. How can I stand firm for something that I don't even have any idea what it is? And so standing firm in the faith is talking about what you believe. Why is this important? Well, listen to Matthew 10:22. All men will hate you because of me. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. Why do we need to know what we believe? So we can stand firm to the end, because the world's going to hate us. We've all been in situations where we've spoken truth, we've spoken God's truth, we've said something's right or something's wrong, and people attack us for it. 1 Corinthians 15:58, just the chapter before this verse, Paul cautions the Corinthians. And he says this, "Therefore, my dear brothers, stand firm. Stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Stand firm. Let nothing move you. You need to know what you believe." The second thing is to be men of courage. To be men of courage. This is talking about how you will live. How you will live. We've talked about courage in here before, and we talked about recklessness versus cowardice And courage is in the middle of this. Where are you going to live your life? Are you going to live your life like a wimp? You don't want to offend anybody, don't want to step into the fray, don't want to be bold, don't want to stand firm really for what you believe in. That's cowardly, or you're just reckless, you're just crazy, going out doing silly things, putting yourself and your family at risk. No, we want to live our lives in the center of that, at a place of courage. Where does courage come from? Well, just like when my kids are in a rock climbing gym or on a cliff outside, and they're climbing up a cliff outside, and they're 40 or 50 feet off the ground, and the next move is a little bit beyond their reach. So they plant their foot and they jump for it. Well, that's crazy. You're 40 feet off the ground. What would you jump for it for? What if you miss? They got a rope on. They got Dad down at the other end holding on to the rope. They trust me. So because they trust me, they can make bold and courageous moves. Who do you trust? Who do you trust? Do you trust God to protect you in those times? If you're afraid to make those moves, if you're afraid to step into the fray like that, you might want to look at, what, in my heart of hearts, do I really trust God? I'm not trying to beat up on you. I'm just saying our behavior sometimes betrays our beliefs. Who do you trust? You can live in a place of courage if your trust is fully in God. So then what about strength? It says, be strong. This is about how you prepare. How you prepare. So, for instance, let's look at Colossians 3:1-2. It says this. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. So this talks about your heart and your mind. How do you prepare your heart and mind to be strong? You set your heart and your mind on things above. You focus on who God is. In Romans 12:1-2, Paul says to the Romans, therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. The word spiritual here is very interesting. It's really the Greek word for reasonable or logical. So now let's read this again. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is a logical thing to do. This is a reasonable way to worship God, is to offer your body as a living sacrifice. Take care of your body, guys. Take care of your body. Look, we got guys coming in to be area directors for Man in the Mirror. We're interviewing these guys. And I got to be honest with you, there's a few guys that I'm worried about their health. Do I want to invest the time, energy, and money of the ministry in a guy that's going to stroke out in 2 years? That may sound mean, but it's stewardship. You're gonna go to all this trouble to prepare your heart and your mind and your soul to do God's work, and then you're going to die of a heart attack because your cholesterol's through the roof and you're overweight? Again, I'm not trying to be mean. It just is what it is. If we're going to act like men, we need to take care of ourselves so that we can be strong. In verse 2, he says this, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by what? By the renewing of your mind. By the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. So how do you be strong? You prepare yourself. You prepare your heart. You prepare your mind. You prepare your body. Heart, mind, body. Body, mind, soul. These are the things that we need to prepare so that we can be strong, so that we can act like men. So that we can act like men in a world that desperately needs men. So, you know what? I got to be honest with you. So far, it's easy. So far, it's easy. I mean, it's sort of like you do the things that you need to do. You're vigilant. All right, I can be watchful. I can do that. I can be expectant. I can train myself up. I can figure out the things that I believe. I can really work to trust God and decide I'm going to live a courageous life. I get this. I can focus my mind. I can focus my heart. I can focus my strength on serving God. I can do those things. But then he sort of gives the kicker. And the kicker is what? Do everything in love. Do everything in love. Man, what does that look like? Well, before we do that, let's practice our verse again. You ready? You ready? Well, then why are you sitting down? All right, here we go. Be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be men of courage. Be strong. Do everything in love. Good job. Sit down. All right. If you're going to go to work today, you're going to be like, yeah, you're going to be doing the Macarena before you're done. All right. So, vigilance, standing firm in the faith, being men of courage, being strong, love. I think this is the hard one. I think this is the hard one. And the great thing about this is when Paul said this to the Corinthians in this letter. Now, by the way, Paul loved this church. He actually spent 1.5 years in Corinth. It's the longest time he ever spent in one place planning a church. He spent 1.5 years there, and then he left. And then this is actually, 1 Corinthians should actually be called 2 Corinthians, and 2 Corinthians should be called 3 Corinthians. But we don't have 1 Corinthians, so we just started with the second letter. But he refers to a letter before this one in 1 Corinthians. But so he wrote them several times. And they would take these letters and they would read them up in front of the church, and they would talk about them a lot. And so this is a long letter, right? 1 Corinthians, 16 chapters that we have, a long letter. But he spent a lot of time talking about love in 1 Corinthians. Do you remember this? Because just a few pages before, or maybe a few rolls up on the parchment, however he wrote it, he wrote a lot about love. And he gave us a pretty good definition of what love looks like, what love is. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It's not proud. It doesn't dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Wow. I'm supposed to do everything like this? When I do, sometimes I go to churches and speak to the men, and we'll talk about marriage, and I'll put this passage up, and I'll have them take the word love out and put their name in. And it stinks. Because I have to do it with them. So I have to lie right along with them. Right? So let's lie together. Put your name in love. We'll read this all together. You ready? Brett is patient. Brett is kind. Brett does not envy. Brett does not boast. Brett is not proud. Brett does not dishonor others. Brett is not self-seeking. Brett is not easily angered. Brett keeps no record of wrongs. Brett does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Brett always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Brett never fails. Do you feel as indicted as I do right now? I don't do this. What does this look like? Well, here I got some questions for us here. Am I patient when my kids frustrate me? Am I kind when someone makes a mistake? Do I envy those who have things that I think that I deserve? Do I dishonor others with my words? Do I make sure that I get the credit? Do I lose my temper easily? Do I keep track of wrongs others have done to me? Oh man. In my marriage, I got a catalog of all the stuff. It's like I keep it in my back pocket. It's like a bank account of stuff that my wife's done wrong. All right, now let's be honest. If she did that, her account she'd have a lot more in her book than I have in mine. A ton more. But in my mind, this is how I justify sometimes when I'm doing something that's dishonoring to her. I do the yeah, but game. Well, yeah, but. Pull it out, look through. Do you remember that time when? Is that love? Is that love? No, that's not love. That's self-centeredness. That's self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is the opposite of love. Do I keep track of wrongs others have done to me? That's me. Do I take pleasure in unrighteousness? Do I rejoice when the truth comes out even when it's painful? Do I protect? Do I trust? Do I hope? Do I persevere? Do I do it always? Love never fails. This is what Paul was talking about when he says, when you act like a man, you do everything in love. And this is our application. Look at this list. You got something. Write down the one that you feel like is the one that you need the most. Go ahead and take a second right now. Pick one from that list. You can talk about at your tables. The one that you're struggling with the most up here. Go ahead. I'll give you 30 seconds. Write it down. You got it? All right. So these are 5 attributes of a man. A man is vigilant. A man stands firm. He knows what he believes. A man has courage. He lives his life courageously. A man has strength. He's prepared. And a man does everything in love. So let's do it one more time. Let's talk about act like a man. Act like men. Here's what we're going to do to act like men. You ready? Wait, start. I want it so loud that camera can hear it. All right, you ready?
Be on your guard. Stand firm in the faith. Be men of courage. Be strong. Do everything in love.
Amen. Let's pray. Father, I look out at this room and I see many men, Father, who are men. I can look out in this room, Lord, and I see guys that I know by reputation or by experience are men that are vigilant and firm in their faith and strong and courageous and loving. Lord, I pray that you would draw other men to these guys, that they could see what that looks like, that they could understand it, that they could start to put those attributes into their own lives. Lord, we all struggle with these things. Father, help us to be vigilant. Help us to not just be protecting ourselves from sin and distraction and false religion, Lord, but also expectant, anticipating, hopeful about what you're going to do and ready for that when it comes. Lord, help us to stand firm in our beliefs, Father. Help us to write those beliefs in our heart. Help us to be there with you regularly, talking to you, reading your word, listening to you, finding out what you would say to us so that we could establish our beliefs. Help us to live courageously, like you said to your servant Joshua, that he should be strong and courageous because you're with him. Lord, help us to be strong in difficult times. Help us to be strong when our kids need a strong dad, or our spouses, our wives need a strong husband. Our churches need strong leaders. Our businesses need strong leaders. Lord, help us to stand and be strong in your name for the sake of the gospel and for your glory. And Lord, I pray that most of all, you would just take the love that you displayed in the sacrifice of your Son, and that we would get that at the deepest levels, so that we can turn around, Lord, and we can realize that there's no injustice that we could ever suffer that's worse than the injustice that you suffered. And Lord, out of that understanding that we've received grace from you, we can spill that out onto the others in our lives. We can be loving to everyone around us, so that people would look at us and they would see the love of Christ in our lives, and you would receive the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.